I got to confess, I'm not nearly as charming or as smart as Ronnie, so I'm going to rely entirely on my beard, my suit, and my walking grace to impress all of you. Good evening. I hope all of you have had a good time. Well, for those of you, I was going to say, for those of you who haven't, unfortunately, there's very little that we can do. I'm actually here to bring the event, sadly, to a close. Before I do that, I do want to highlight a few observations and also share a few comments. Number one, I think we've heard everyone say, and hopefully everyone agrees, that the world's biggest social issues and challenges, India's biggest social issues and challenges, are the biggest business opportunities. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an investor, or a social foundation, the biggest opportunities lies in trying to find solutions that more than 70% of the world's population deals with in areas of healthcare, livelihood, and education. So I think it's important that we remind ourselves that these are challenges, but these are also opportunities. Second, the market, I think today, is demanding a different set of financial instruments. They are looking for equity, they're looking for debt, they're looking for grants. Also, over these couple of days, we heard of people talk about SIBs, DIBs, PRIs, MRIs, and a host of other financial instruments. All of this is good and important, but I want to caution, in fact, I think you could also be mistaken into thinking this was a financial conference or a banker's conference, depending on which room you walked into. And here's my word of caution. I want all of us to remember and not get, well, first of all, I want all of us to not get carried away with all the financial jargons. I want us to remember who the leaders really are in this movement, which brings me to my third point, the talent. What kind of people do we need to run the sector, to lead the movements? Do we need people with financial experience? Do we need social leaders? Do we need consultants, engineers, subject matter experts? Or do we need a combination of all of these? Do these people exist? Do we need to train them? Do we create them? I think there's a whole host of questions that needs to be answered because the talent is going to be important. It's going to define this movement over the next couple of decades. Which brings me to my next point. Assuming that the people sitting here are going to be key, like you said, Ronnie, to defining this, we have to remember, in the wise words of Spider-Man, with power comes responsibility. So, given that all of us sitting here and those outside have this responsibility and power to define solutions in this area, we have to remember as we are creating these instruments, whether they are DIBs, whether they are grants, that it is imperative to take risks, but it's also important to remember that this false sense of urgency is not a substitute for efficiency and effectiveness. We have to remember that we have failed in the past, and there is a good chance that some of these might fail in the future. That is all right. But it is also important to remember that the failure is not only going to affect those of us who are deciding and designing these solutions, but more importantly, the communities and the people who it's supposed to impact. Which brings me to my last point. Why are we doing this? Who are we trying to help? Are they here in this room today? What do they think about all of this? How do we make sure they're part of the solution? I think, friends, it's very important to remember and remind ourselves constantly, we do that, I know, as a foundation, that we have to be out on the field, listening to the people that we are trying to help as we design these solutions. Make sure that we have the channels open to hear back from them so that we can constantly redesign and put together new solutions. Yes, we have a lot of the experts sitting here in the room, but I think it's very important to remember that a lot of people are not and never will be in these rooms. So we have to create channels and mechanisms to make sure that they're also part of the solution. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy lives to come and visit Delhi, actually AeroCity. I hope you've taken this opportunity to make new friends, maybe even get rid of old ones, who knows. But like Ronnie said, it's very impressive that we have more than 900 people from 34 plus countries. Before we get too excited, we have to remember in India, that's just another wedding. In fact, not even a big one. A really big wedding, as Nisit can tell you, is actually, what, 1,000, 2,000 people? So that's 2 GSC conferences. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the stay in this part of the world. If you have the time, please do try to visit Delhi. It has some beautiful monuments and good shopping. The air is not as bad as it will be in a couple of weeks, so you should take advantage of it. Thank you and safe travels.